Welcome to Milestone Moments, the show where we explore the journeys that lead to success. I'm Sheila Slick, your host and founder of 5 Milestones. In every episode, we will bring you insights from the minds of entrepreneurs, leaders, and experts who will share not just their expertise, but the milestone moments that have reshaped their journeys and led to significant achievements. So if you're looking for motivation, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and discover the milestones that mark the path to success. Welcome to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. I'm your host, Sheila Slick, and today my special guest is Andrew Ackerman. Andrew has founded 2 startups, invested in over 70 early stage companies, and he has mentored hundreds of founders through accelerators and in the classroom. Andrew has published over 60 articles for Fortune, Forbes, PropModo, CRE Tech, Alley Watch, and more. And his latest book, The Entrepreneur's Odyssey, turns years of founders' advice into a story you actually want to read. A textbook disguised as a novel about what it really takes to launch a startup. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. That was a great intro.
Well, thank you. And I am seeing the cover of this, The Entrepreneur's Odyssey, and I can't wait to learn more. What's the meaning behind the cover? And tell me all about the book.
Sure. So, I'm maybe overly fond of visual puns. Uh, so the cover of the book is an image of a maze, and there's a founder standing in front of it, and he's got a chainsaw, and he's literally hacking his way through the maze. We talk about startups, startups as hackers or cutting through problems in a novel and unique way. Like that's the metaphor I wanted for the cover.
So he's with the chainsaw creating his own maze.
Just cutting a path straight through, going as direct as possible.
But if it's straight through, we all know that entrepreneurs, it's never that easy to go in a straight path, right? You gotta.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he can choose. He has a chainsaw.
So how is this book different? What would make us want to read it? What is that novel factor about it?
Yeah, well, that brings us to the second pun, right? So it's the subtitle is it's a novel approach to startup success because it's written like a novel. And so I'll have a confession to make, right? My confession is that I really don't like business books. Even the ones that are actually quite good often are kind of hard to read. So, it's almost like they have the same ghostwriter in like Indiana who writes it, the same kind of chipper tone of voice, bland but chipper. And it's like anecdote, name drop, name drop, name drop, chapter summary at the end. And to be honest, most of the time, if you just ripped out that half-page chapter summary and just stapled all 30 of those together, you'd have a great 30-page book, and that would be it. But even the good ones, like, it's just hard to read. And as a result, in addition to being hard to read, it's hard to remember. It doesn't really connect with you. So what I found when I first started running accelerator programs and I'm like trying to give advice to startups, I could just tell them like, hey, Sheila, listen, you got this e-commerce company. You're probably going to live and die based on like your click-through rate. Why don't you, instead of like building everything, why don't you just take some Google AdWords a campaign out, go to like a mock-up of the site and just see what happens first. And that was okay. And some startups took that advice. But when I say, listen, I invested in this other company a couple of years ago called whatever. And they were in a very similar situation as you are. Their revenue model, their entire business model depended on being able to get people into their site for under a certain cost per click. They were kind of worried about it and they decided, let's just do a mock-up of the site, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So same advice. But one was me just telling them, and one was me telling them about the other startup who did it. And like the take rate on that advice was so much higher through the story because people could identify with it. They understood like, oh, I see that. I see me in that character, right? That's, meaningful to me. It's memorable. So when it came time to like let's just write it all down. I went back to an earlier book that I had in business school called The Goal, which was a novel about business. And I'm like, I have to write the book this way. So the entire book is about a fictional startup from the moment they pitch their idea in like an evening event at a law firm to finding a mentor, to finding their co-founder, to ultimately raising their first round of financing. And all the lessons are embedded in that story.
So we all know there's different types of companies, right? We got the brick and mortar and then we got the tech startup. So this entrepreneurial odyssey, is this for someone who has an idea for an innovation, or is it for Joe who wants to start a pressure washing company?
Yeah, that's a very good point, right? And I tell people that they're all startups, but the kind of archetypical tech startup that you think of when you think about like, Facebook or, those movies, that's where I live, right? That's the kind of stuff I invest in. That's the kind of stuff I did. But it's actually a very small subset of all the businesses people start. Uh, but really, my book is written to the people running that kind of startup. Now, it's not to say that there aren't lessons there for you in general. And they don't all have to be software startups, right? You could be making a new type of, I don't know, hairbrush, right? A lot of the lessons still apply, but it's definitely geared to the kind of people who are either currently doing something where they're sitting in their office, like, I'm dying here. I have a great idea. I want to go do something new. It's definitely geared to those kinds of entrepreneurs.
Okay. Well, that just brought me back. I had told you that my youngest had just gone off to college about 2 years ago. He went to entrepreneurship summer camp, and all these kids were maybe 17, and so in that week, they all had to, go from idea. They had to build teams and have to go from idea to the presentation, and it was so beautiful to see Generation Z come up with these mind-blowing ideas, and it just came to mind when you said a brush, because one of them, they had access to 3D printers. One of them actually came with a brush that you could, unscrew and put dry shampoo and then screw it back in so that, you could, I guess, brush your hair without having to wash it.
Very cool. So I teach entrepreneurship also. I do one course a semester. And, I maybe it's because I just don't know how to do it any other way. I only know how to teach entrepreneurship by doing. So the students break up into, different teams, 4 people per team. And I take them through the entire process of customer discovery all the way through to like completing their deck and what it's like to raise a round. I don't think I could imagine doing that with them in 1 week. It's just hyper accelerated. So it takes the course of a semester. And ironically, one of the girls in the class has a similar but not exactly the same idea around a hairbrush. So it's interesting how like, people kind of start to think in similar paths.
Well, the only part I didn't like, now maybe they were able to do it because it was 8 hours, it was intensive,
Yeah.
but they only spent half the day together in teams, because the second half, they were actually visiting alumni startups around town, and it was a beautiful program. I went to the presentations. The only heartbreaking thing for me that was an eye opener was the Generation Z, right, at 16, 17. Anyone that was the age of 30, or any product that came out that was the age of 30, their logos look like Mr. Magoo, and for those that don't know what
Yeah.
Mr. Magoo is, right? And I was like, "Wait a minute, we're not that old, right? We're still young."
I don't know about you, Sheila, but I identify as 29.
I'm telling you that if you're teaching like this generation, it was a great way to
Yeah.
put in a perspective how we are perceived.
Yeah. Yeah. I have 3 teenage girls. Like they have no problem reminding me.
So do you teach them entrepreneurship? Do you sit around the table asking them if they have
So
ideas?
not really. Like all parents, nothing that you do will be cool to your kids, but it'll be cool to your kids' friends. So my daughter's friends have invited me in to talk to their first high school and college entrepreneurship classes, and it's great. But like to my kids, I'm just I stop being such a dork dad.
Oh, well, at least you're appreciated somewhere in that, ecosystem, right?
Hey, once you send a daughter off to college, then they start loving you again. It's rough in high school, but it gets a lot better after.
Alright, so we talked about the cover of the book, but in your profile, you have a chair that I must ask, what is the meaning of the chair? Can you first describe the chair?
Sure. So I can describe it and I can give you the meaning in the same time. So if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, there is the throne of swords, right? So you're on there. It's made of the melted swords of all their enemies. So back in 2015, I was down in Austin for South by Southwest, and that was like heyday of Game of Thrones. So they had a pop up called South by Southwesteros. Westeros, for those three people out there in your audience who don't know it, that's the fictional land that Game of Thrones is in. So this pop up, and they had like models of like the sword needle that one of the characters had. They had a model where you could take a photo of your face, and it would put you on the wall of faces, which were like masks of dead people in one part of the show. And then they had the game, the throne, so you could get your picture taken sitting on the throne. So I had it. And I went back and forth for like my Uber and Lyft profile. Do I use the dead face on the wall or do I use the me in the throne? The Uber drivers are a lot more likely to pick you up if you use you in the throne rather than the dead mask on the wall.
Okay. That clears it up, so it does have a theme to it. I was just wondering, is that like a chair that he has in his office or at home? Because with all those swords, it was a bit intimidating, right? When I'm seeing the profile, like,
Yeah, for
okay.
it's like one of those like shibboleths, right? For the people who are fans of Game of Thrones, they're like, "Oh my God, where did you get that photo?" And for everyone else, they're like, "Well, that's an odd profile photo."
Yeah, and I don't know what the Game of Thrones is, so I will
Sheila, you and I have to talk after the podcast.
I don't know, it looks like sci-fi?
More fantasy, more Lord of the Rings, less Star Wars.
Okay, yeah, no, um, definitely keep on talking. Okay, so along the way, in this Odyssey, in the book, with your experience, you have collected a lot of unfiltered stories without mentioning names or anything specific. What is that one story that sticks out?
In the book or just in general?
Whichever you choose, whether it be in the book or in your experience, because
Okay.
it must be really interesting, when you're teaching so many people,
Sure.
right?
I'll tell you an honest to God true story, and I'll tell you the name of the company. And it's in the book in a modified form. And this is one of those experiences where I realized like the stories are the way to get the advice like actually listened to. So there was a company that was going through the accelerator I used to work at, Dream Ventures, and this was a long time ago, and they had a blog discovery service. Back then, early on, blogs were super big, and finding the ones that were a better fit for you than your interest in others was kind of a reasonable problem. And they had this thesis that they could put a free version out that would get you so far, and then there was a paid version, and some people would pay for being helped to find really good blogs to read. So, they come into the program, like, here's our model, this is what we're gonna do. It's like, so what are your plans? Like, well, it'll take us another, 7, 8 weeks to finish building all the premium features. So that'll be about a few weeks before demo day when we present to all the investors. So we'll have it rolled out, we'll get a little bit of data, and boom, we're gonna go try to raise a seed round on that. And we said, well, what happens if the numbers aren't good? You're rolling into demo day, you'll have nothing. Like, well, no, we hadn't really thought about that. And they said, well, we have a better idea for you. You already have all the free features working, right? I said, yeah. You already know what the paid features are going to be, right? Oh, yeah. You know what you're going to charge for 'em? Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Put up the buy now page. Put up the, upgrade, kind of push people to upgrade the way you would normally. Show them like, upgrade, you get these features, everything from before plus these features. And it's I don't know, $9.99 a month, and see how many people click buy now. And once they click buy now, it's you don't have to do anything. You just take pop up and say, "Hey, coming soon. Give us your email address, and we'll let you know when it's available." But up until that last stage, it should look absolutely real to your customer, because then you'll know that you'll know what percentage of your audience you can probably get to convert to paid. I said, "That's awesome." All right, so they do that. It takes them a couple of days to put it up. They test it for about a week. They come back totally crestfallen. What's wrong? Well, you know, the business model we have says we need a 2% conversion rate to paid to make this business work. And we were getting like a 0.1%, right? There's just no way we can optimize this thing to get to 2%, much less any higher. So we think we're kind of out of luck here. And so, well, okay, that's not the right approach. What can we do differently? So they think about it for a bit and they say like, well, the type of blogs that we seem to get the most interest in are the kind of blogs that talk about sporting and concert venues and like, the tips and tricks to get the best seats there. We think we're going to do a pivot and we're going to do stuff in that space. So with, I think it was 6 or 7 weeks left before demo day, they scrapped their entire business that they'd been working on up until that point and built a whole new business. And that business today is SeatGeek. It's $1 billion
That
company.
just came in today. That's the concert.
Concerts and sport venues, they started off as being like a place to sell, but not just like StubHub where you could sell your tickets, but they would search all the different secondary markets. Like kind of Kayak was for different airlines websites. So they would do all of that. And now you can even just list your tickets there. And now they even have like theaters who use it to deliver tickets that way electronically. And they even have a stadium named after them. But all of this would never have happened, and the company would have been stillborn if they'd gone with their initial instinct was, let's build and see what happens, rather than adapt one of the quintessential startup attitudes, which is, how can I test this quickly and cheaply? Like, how can I de-risk this as soon as possible? Because if it's not going to work, I want to save myself weeks, if not months of effort going down a blind path.
Wow. So that would be the validation stage, what you were describing, right?
Yeah.
You're asking them to get a 2%. So in order to even be able to get that data, it's very important to be able to track that data. What's the easiest way to track that data? Google Analytics or
Well, for that kind of stuff, Google Analytics is really pretty simple, right? They're talking about the number of people who would click a certain button and go to a certain page. That's super easy. It's not always that easy. Like sometimes, if I want to see like how effective, say, my billboard ads are, like it's kind of hard. Like I've got 3 other different ads running at the same time. I've got online, I've got outgoing email. It's kind of hard to disaggregate that. But sometimes it's just face to face. So for instance, in the book, I talk about an index card app. Have you ever heard of an index card app?
no?
Okay. Not surprising because I think I made it up, but I might not have. It might have been something that I heard. So let's say, I'll give you the example in the book. So the entrepreneur in the book is named Marcus, and he has this idea for startup. He's totally wrong. His mentor, Jason. The reason I slipped up there is there's a lot of Easter eggs in the book. So Jason is actually named after John Asen, who was one of the OG of the New York investor scene. He passed not that many years ago, but he was a super sharp angel investor. So anyway, so his mentor Jason says, like, we're not going to go sell to businesses, but it kind of makes sense maybe to sell this for like on the go professionals. So Marcus has to go back and do customer discovery again. And he's like, well, okay, I'll start building, these new features. And Jason's like, no. Here's what he ends up doing. He gets a pack of index cards, $5, takes a pen, sketches out what the screens would look like on the app. And he goes out and he's talking to, a woman in his network who's a real estate agent who he thinks might be one of the target markets for like the new focus of this app. And he says, Julia, I remember the name because my wife's named Julie and she's a real estate agent. In this case, it's Julia, uh, I'm going to give you these index cards. I want you to just treat the index cards as if it's an app on your phone. I mean, literally, if you're going to press a button, touch that part of the card, and then I'll give you a new screen, which will be where it takes you. Don't ask me questions, because if you were downloading the app, I wouldn't be here to answer questions. The one thing I'm asking you to do differently, Marcus says, is just verbalize what you're thinking, right? So if you're looking at the card and like, I don't know what button to press, just say that out loud. Or it's like, I want to press this, but I'm worried what will happen. Just say that out loud, because I can't read your mind. But other than that, you just interact with this index card app as if I were in the room. Now, the beauty of that approach is, again, for the cost of like $5 worth of index cards, you can talk to 20, 30, 40 people, and you can see how they interact with your almost app. And if none of them click on a certain set of features, either your design was so bad they didn't know what they were, that's why you ask them afterwards, or nobody really needs those features. So why build them? And if you get to a point where like they're all running into the problems in the same place, maybe your design is bad and you have to fix that before you go out there. Maybe how you're offering the product doesn't work and you need to change it. But you can get all that feedback before you spend a bunch of time and maybe a bunch of money building. So how are you measuring that? Like you're looking, like you're just absorbing the mind of the customer over 20 or 30 or 40 interviews like that.
And all with hand-drawn index cards that represent different screens and buttons.
Hang on.
Y
Now you can do it with it's called like the technical term if you wanted to do it online is a clickable wireframe. Think of it like a movie storyboard, but interactive. So you could do it with an actual app. Wouldn't take very long to build. You could do it with a website, but you can do it with index cards.
So, we know that with AI, everything is evolving real quick. Out of the top of your head, what opportunities do you see in these times with this disruption?
Yeah, I'd love someone to come up with a tool that tells ChatGPT to stop pretending it can do things it can't do.
That's
Sorry,
your
just
role.
recently. No, just recently, like I went down. So I've been doing a bunch of podcasts, as you might imagine. And, I get sometimes here's like your 30, 50-minute podcast. And I was, if, if the host or the hostess didn't chop them up and give me highlight reels, I usually just link to it and we're done. But I remember thinking, wouldn't it be really cool if I could just automatically get 5 or 6 highlights, 10-second long clips and post those? And I'm thinking, well, I don't have time to do all the editing. I said, oh, so ChatGPT, here's my video. Do you think you can like do it? It's like, sure, no problem. Like I'll go through it. I'll identify the clips and then we'll make the little clips. Do you want me to add branding? Do you want me to put like a pre-roll? I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Here's the files for the branding, the pre-roll. And then as we get into it, about like 3 hours later, and I'm like, great, make the clips. And it's like, okay, it'll take me like an hour, come back, nothing. I'm like, what's happening? It's like, oh, I didn't know how to tell you this, but I can't really edit videos. I don't really edit videos. Here's other services you can use. Like, then why the hell did you tell me you could do it? And I said, well, at least you identified automatically a bunch of different segments that I can use. Okay, that's half the battle. And then I go to look at those segments that I identified, and it's absolutely nothing like what it says those clips are. Like, the words don't align. Like the breaks are like right in the middle of a sentence. And I'm like, dude, what's with the bad clipping? Like your time index is off. I was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, I can't really transcribe and understand your video. I was just doing it on the basis the kinds of things you normally say, and this is like indicative. And I'm like, so you did nothing. It's like if I gave work to an intern and they said, yeah, I'll get the spreadsheet for you by tomorrow, and they had no idea how to use Excel and no intention of actually doing it. Okay, I'm done ranting. I'll answer your question for real. Which was what exactly about AI?
Oh, because you're so involved, in entrepreneurship and you're teaching and
Mhm.
startups, what's one opportunity that you see that you can out of the
Okay.
top of your head?
So I mean, it seems like when new technologies come along and they open up a whole new array of opportunities where there were insolvable problems before, like everyone seems to start sprinkling that word on top of their deck. So a couple of years ago, everything was like blockchain, right? Natural language processing, like you're sprinkling fairy dust or seasoning on your startup. So almost all the pitches I get now, with the exception of the robotics one, are all like, oh, we're using AI to do X, Y, Z. A lot of the times it's like, they're not really using AI. It's like basic stuff. Uh, but the ones where they are really using AI break down into basically two categories. There is um, vertical AI or applied AI. Oh, sorry, those are two different things. Sorry, there's applied AI, and then there's like in the foundational AI. So the difference is when I'm doing applied AI, I'm using kind of off the shelf tools. I may be enriching it, customizing it, but I'm using it to do stuff, usually within an industry. So, super simple example is if you're a real estate agent and you need to write reviews or summaries of a property that you're listing, most realtors are quite bad at writing that. You can just you can point ChatGPT at a couple of not ChatGPT, is other service, at a couple of photos and the structured data, and it'll write it for you. Now, they didn't create the library or the AI underneath it. They're applying that AI to a specific use case. And then there's the more foundational AI or the frontier tech, where people are coming up with entirely new AI models. And, that's the super expensive, really hard stuff to do. I don't do that second type of investing, but I see a lot of applied AI. So my advice for anybody who is in sort of a day job and they're trying to decide, like, is this the right idea for me to pursue? Is it the right time for me to leave? Well, my number one advice is buy the book, because if anything, because it's written like a novel, you'll actually understand what it feels like to be an entrepreneur and if that's a good fit for you. But the other thing to do is to just try to use some of the other out off the shelf tools to simulate what you're trying to do, to see how easy it is to do. There's solutions. You could use ChatGPT, or if you want to use kind of vibe coding tools, there's a tool called Lovable, which will help build the entire app for you. But you can use these tools to get a lot further than you used to be able to get, before we had AI. Now, what you specifically do with that, that's got to come from you. Like whatever problem you face, if it's super painful and you're pretty certain that a lot of people are in the exact same boat as you, and ideally it happens a lot, if you can solve that now using these AI tools, now's the time to do it.
I like that. Okay. So I'm going to throw an idea out there. I'm not going to be the one developing it, but you're in front of a lot of brilliant minds and you're a teacher. So just let me know when it gets implemented. You know how we were talking about that button and how you have to monitor clicks, right? So a lot of people struggle with Google Analytics, right? Because Google just isn't simple. I
Mhm.
mean, the only thing that's simple at this point is our search bar. But when you're going in a cloud and you're going into all of these infrastructures they have, it's really hard to navigate, within that. So what if this same screen, when they're testing the button, and they can maybe even use AI, because sometimes by just changing the copy, perhaps they would get different results, whether or not the person clicks or not. So
Mhm.
what the bun could do is, instead of having to analyze what they clicked, is that AI says, "Oh, here's your customer journey. They spent 1 second here," and then suggest improvements. Well, I know SeatGeek wouldn't have been born, but I'm just saying, imagine if you use, the AI so that when you click, all of those insights are there and it's reading all the text on the page, and so you're able to just go click and start making those edits to see what that looks like, so that
So,
int
it's a good idea. Parts of it have been in the works or even available for over a decade now. So we talk about AI now. It's not like AI just came out of nowhere. Like companies have been using AI for a long time. What's different about it is not only how really good it's getting, but also how easy it is now for uh, the casual user to get at. Beforehand, it had to be something that you built on your own in-house. Now there are, and there have been for a while we call them MarTech, marketing technology startups out there that have come up with solutions for that kind of thing. So at the very simplest level, you might A/B test a button. Do I put the buy button on the right or do I put the buy button on the left? Do I use this copy versus that copy? They would just A/B test different pages, and it'll be automated. I think it's even built into Google Analytics. They can just do that for you. And when Google AdWords came out, it wasn't very long before they would let you ABCD test 4 different types of ads. They would just run 4 different types of ads, and the ones that got the more click-throughs, they'd start running more and more of until they found the winning ads to do the most of. So that got pretty sophisticated pretty quickly. What they didn't do at that point is they didn't generate the ideas that you wanted to test. That was a little bit too much for them. But as the technology is evolved, they can suggest different ads. They can suggest different copy. They can suggest different placement of those buttons based on what they've seen elsewhere and what works. So that stuff's already in the works, already available to a large degree. The next step, and the stuff that's getting kind of really interesting, and the teams in my current class is using this as their student project, is, Google Analytics shows you a whole bunch of numbers. It doesn't really tell you, Sheila, you should try this next because. So they wanted to come up with an e-commerce companion, they called it, which would sit on top of, Spotify's analytics, for example, and translate that into, okay, Sheila, it's Monday morning. Here are the 1 or 2 things we think we should do differently this week because you're losing sales on this, or we think you'll get more sales on that. And in most cases, you can say, yes, let's try that, and it'll do it for you. So changing it from being an analytics platform that you look at and decide what to do to basically being that analyst that looks at it for you and then gives you like, hey, 3 recommendations. What do you want to do? Your call, boss.
Exactly, because it's not that easy to interpret the analytics, right? The data's there, and then you're like, okay, great. Well, even going back to that one example you did, that it was 2% and they were what, 0.1, and it didn't work. So if you could just have it tell you based on what people were doing, what you should do.
Yeah, and that's kind of the next frontier for AI is like turning data into some fairly simple, appropriate recommendations and to just do them.
All right. So how are you going to wrap this up? What is one lesson that you'd like to leave us with?
Okay, if you're a founder and you're looking to raise money, the number one thing you should never, 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 never do is send a cold email to a VC. The best thing I can say that'll happen is we won't even notice it. We'll just delete it. So if you've done it already, relax. It's okay. No harm done. But the best by far way to get an investor who might actually invest is to get a warm introduction to them. Somebody that you know in common who can say, hey, I've known Sheila a bunch of years now. She's sharp. She's got a really great idea. Andrew, you should talk to her. That is the way to reach a VC. And if you don't have that connection, here's the hack. You ready?
I'm ready.
You can cold email one of the investors' portfolio companies, preferably one that has something to do with what you're doing, because they're going through the same journey you are. They're not overwhelmed with tons of like rando founders, some of whom are clearly cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They're not overrun by that. Like they're running their business. They don't get as many of these like crazy, like, hey, I'm another startup. They're likely to sympathize. If you're in the same space, you meet, you may even have an opportunity to do business together. And after you've met, if you guys hit it off, they may turn around and say, I really love what you're doing, Sheila. Would you like to talk to my investors? Right? You would phrase it as like, hey, Andrew, I'm thinking about approaching, I don't know, vertical ventures. I see they've invested in you. I just want to know what kind of people they are. Are they been good investors or not? Can we talk for a little bit? And then that conversation blooms into an actual relationship between you and their portfolio company. And then you get what's perhaps the best warm intro ever, which is, from one of their portfolio companies that they're making money on or looks like they're going to make money on.
So it's
That's
fair
the
to
way
say I know you now. So to all my listeners out there, if you want to get a hold of Andrew,
they have to email you. But it works better if you actually know that, right? So a warm intro is like, hey, this is one of my listeners. I just met her like 3 days ago. Not really sure what she does, but Andrew, would you talk to her? That's not really the super vote of confidence. But if it's like, hey, this is my assistant producer. I've been working with him for 5 years now. He's got this great idea, super sharp guy. I think the idea is good. Andrew, do you want to take a listen? Like, that's a good intro.
well, that was a second tip too. So where can we find you, or how can we
Uh,
purchase the Entrepreneur's Odyssey?
we can find me. It's usually the Upper West Side of Manhattan. But if you're looking for the book, best place to look is on Amazon. If you're interested in just a little bit more background on me, and of course a link to the book, my personal website is Andrew, the letter B as in boy, Ackerman, .com. So you can go there, find out a little bit more about me, and oh yes, you can buy the book through there also.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. Until next time.